everybody? Welcome to the BFF show. I'm Brendan.
I'm Franco.
And we have got a wonderful show. Quick update, though, before we get to the meat and potatoes of this show, which is our bread and butter, NFL Week 2. I believe, Franco, with the contract update, and maybe we can scroll that first edit of the night, maybe we can scroll that right here. 2 shows left on AMP. Is that correct?
Yes, we have 2 shows left on this contract with no word from AMP Media. So if you really enjoy our show, feel welcome to reach out to AMP Media. That's AMP of Monterey Peninsula. Google them. I would give you I'll put the web address, second end of the night, web address for AMP Media. Send the email. You want more BFF show all day.
All day. And to make it clear that I want to show what AMP is going to be missing, I went sleeveless for the gun show. Look at that. This is the best that LA Fitness money can buy you right here. Just about the same. And this one, yep, about the same too. Nothing really.
You do live in California. Do you have a permit to conceal carry?
Oh, look at you throwing out compliments. I like that. All right, but let's get into this. Like I said, we've got a lot to talk about. I think maybe, we were talking a little bit literally right before we hit record, about some of the stars of the NFL that are just not acting like the stars that we come to expect them to be. And sort of, I guess, Franco, let's start with that. Who are some of the people that you're like, what's going on with these people, and maybe why? And I have some reasons too that I think play into it, but why do you think certain stars and which stars are they? Are they not competing at the level you expect them to?
I mean, there's a couple of examples. If you look at the Arizona Cardinals, you have Larry Fitzgerald, and that's more of a product of Carson Palmer not playing well and that offense really sputtering. David Johnson going down affects that, but a lot of people picked up Carson Palmer to be their quarterback number 1, and he's struggled a great deal. Same thing when you're looking at T.Y. Hilton with the Indianapolis Colts. Losing Andrew Luck kind of set him back a great deal. I would preach patience with that, but still, he's underperforming, and he's probably drafted at the end of your first round, middle second round range. So that's a big disappointment. And then Ezekiel Elliott, 9 yards. That's a murder, especially for a guy that's supposed to be producing at a high level. So yes, he won that court case. He will be probably the rest of the year playing for you, but it's a scary number, 9 yards. First time ever for him. So.
And a lot of discussion on Monday morning with folks discussing that, Ezekiel quit, and that he, especially on that interception play, didn't really chase down the interception, just kind of stalled out. I mean, I don't know, are we reading too much into it, or do you think it's indicative of his mental state at the moment and his commitment to the team?
So I'll be honest, I've never been a big Ezekiel Elliott fan. I don't like his character. I think he's generally not a locker room guy that's going to be a pillar for your team. I think what we saw was just a more reflection of who he is. Ezekiel Elliott's about Ezekiel Elliott. He's not about the Cowboys. We see it all the time with this whole feed me more thing, give me the ball more than anybody else. I think that's the player that he is, and I think that's not going to change, and I think that's another example why he's in so much trouble. He's selfish. That's what I'm saying.
I agree with you. I think that's sort of when you are in a team that's successful, you kind of hide and mask those elements. And I think when a team is not doing well or has a bad game and those things come out, then they're just highlighted more. And staying in the NFC East, but moving to a different team, you have the New York Football Giants, who were absolutely atrocious on Monday night against the Lions, and primarily it comes down to they have no offensive line. Just Eli getting sacked, Eli making bad decisions. That team doesn't seem to be gelling. You have Odell Beckham Jr., who, again, going back to fantasy, a lot of people picked him and expected him to carry their teams, and he's not there yet. I think there's still some hope, because we've seen, at least we have a little bit more history with Odell Beckham Jr., that he can probably come back from it if things trend upward. But I don't know with this team right now. But what are your thoughts on the New York Football Giants, and especially Coach Ben McAdoo laying primarily the blame before 2-time Super Bowl champion Eli Manning's feet?
Yeah, number one, what a not classy move by McAdoo.
Yeah.
Not friend of the show, Ben McAdoo.
Not a friend of the show.
I think Odell Beckham's going to be fine. Remember, he's coming off an ankle injury. the original prognosis that he gave out was 6 to 8 weeks. We're currently at 4 weeks, so he has 2 more years to recover. 2 more weeks to recover. If it's 2 more years, he's in a lot of trouble. I think what we saw there, the offense isn't clicking.
Breaking news.
And I think it's a bit of old age catching up. So Brandon Marshall isn't the player he used to be, obviously. He had 2 drops this last game, 2 really good catches he could have had. It would have made a big difference. Eli Manning, the era of Eli may be coming to an end. And the era of Davis Webb may be starting. We'll see. But I think those players are slower, and when before Eli could get a quicker release and kind of work around a bad offensive line, it's not possible anymore. And props to Shane Vereen for trying to pick up the running game when none existed, but with no offensive line and no deep passing game, it was closed holes all night. So I think the Giants are in a lot of trouble. I think McAdoo's in a lot of trouble. And I think the way he handled that's going to alienate him in the locker room, just given how important Eli is to that franchise.
Yeah, I totally agree. Having watched many a Giant game in my lifetime, for better and worse, it's sad. But you're right. Eli's getting older. I don't know how much longer he can make it. And they're not helping him with a terrible, porous offensive line where he's getting drilled. And primarily the biggest highlight coming out of that Monday Night Football game is him just getting sacked. And his 4th and 1 that got knocked down because of the delay game. And it just, I don't know. I think you're right. I think you got to start having the conversation about how do you transition out of the Eli Manning period for the New York Football Giants and then transition into a new quarterback, which is never easy. And the Giants, if I had to predict, are going to be the type of team that holds on for too long. And then it's going to be too late, and then you're going to have to see a franchise reset for like 5 to 10 years of them trying to get back into the game via the draft. But let's talk about maybe in general. We're talking about just downward trending players. The NFL's downward trending, Franco. No one's really watching the product anymore. Last night on Sunday nights, Atlanta Green Bay game was down 8% compared to last year. The ratings were down 23% compared to 2015, and when you watch the product the first 2 weeks, you had maybe some flashes of interest, but the quality of the games, for whatever reason, and maybe I'm just noticing it because the volume is up, but the quality doesn't seem to be there that we expect it to be. Have you noticed that at all? And why do you think if you have, why? And what do you think the trend is moving forward? Do the ratings continue to go down, or is this just a down year for the NFL?
I'm not sure it's a down year. I think a big part of this is the way we're watching football has changed greatly. So a lot of us now watch on Red Zone, which takes away numbers from major games. Not so much the Sunday night game, but with the afternoon games. I will say the Denver game did get delayed for lightning. And so that led to that game going really long on Fox and pushing into the Sunday night game. I think viewer fatigue may have played into that number dropping a little bit this year. So we'll see what happens next week. Additionally, Atlanta doesn't have a big following. They're not one of your major marquee teams that brings a lot of viewers with them. The Packers are, but maybe that matchup wasn't as enticing, especially considering last year Atlanta blew out the Packers in the conference championship. So, yep. It could be the game. It could be that lead-in. That could be the problem. Overall, I think just we're not watching football in the same way. We're not always tuning in to the main NBC, ABC channels. So that's a big part of it as well.
I think part of it maybe is, for me, that when you have these bad games, it's amplified, and more often than not, particularly with the Thursday night series, it's like, no, they're scheduling the not so great games for Thursday night because they don't expect it to perform well, and you get your marquee game on Sunday night, and then you get a mixed bag on Monday night. But I think that kind of hurts the product overall, where you have 5 games if you're an NFL fan that you can watch every single week. That's a lot of games to watch. That's 15 hours of your life you got to dedicate. And I think if you are getting fed product that's not competitive or ends up just being boring, I think that's part of the problem that they have. If we were running the NFL, Franco, and I want you to answer this, give me one quick fix for how to make the NFL get better with their ratings. And I think for me, the first thing would be to cut the Thursday night games and put those back into the rotation for Sunday. I just think that it's asking a lot of the players, clearly, because you get the most injuries and you get the worst play on the Thursday night games, and it just doesn't help the product.
I'm inclined to agree. I think, number one, we'll never own an NFL team or be on the board of directors, so sorry to mess up that dream. But the reality is the Thursday night games, again, it goes back to viewer fatigue, right? If it's 5 games a week, 3 nights a week, which I'm sure my spouse personally hates because she doesn't watch football, but yet I'm always tuned in. I think stepping back that Thursday night and saving it for a special occasion. So it used to be they had them 3 or 4 times a year. Much different. I think that's much more viable. Kind of spread it out that way instead of making it an every week thing. That would help a great deal. And I also think having a flexible TV schedule, which they have later on in the year to deal with parity, if they can negotiate that to be earlier on in the season so they can move those marquee games around and choose what the game of the week is going to be based on, I mean, the first 2 weeks, right? The NFL is pretty high on parity thanks to salary cap. So we never really know who's going to be good and who's not going to be good. And so we see matchups that aren't going to be great leading the NFL game of the week. So having a flexible schedule and the ability to schedule who's going to be on prime time based on the records early in the season would help, and I think getting rid of that Thursday game would also help.
And I think eventually, and this is probably a subject for another podcast / TV show, but we've had many conversations on the old radio show about the effect of concussions and how that is trickling down toward Pee Wee football, high school football, parents having to make tougher decisions as to whether or not they want their child to play. I don't think I'm not saying that that's happening now, but again, you have that talk that has been started the last 3 or 4 years. In addition to all the PR blunders we've gone through and dissected on this show and on the radio show that the NFL has been known for, you may start to see the talent pool drop as those parents position those kids to be successful in other sports early on and take them out of the pool for football, which could happen. But I think that's all kind of the perfect storm of what's going on with the NFL, and that it doesn't look good. I mean, there's more and more chatter and noise and articles I've read about. This is like we're on the death march in terms of the NFL's popularity. That it's we already left the station, and then in the next 25 to 30 years, we're going to see it sharply decline. So we'll have to see.
I mean, I think a lot will depend on what happens in the next 25 to 30 years.
Yeah.
Do they perfect helmet technology? Do they develop rules that keep players safe? Will the game stay interesting? Will they continue to develop parity, or will they go towards baseball and have a Yankees model where the highest team will push? It just really all depends on what happens. I mean, in 25 years, we have 5 collective bargaining agreements until then. A lot can change each time, so it's hard to project. But I do think you're right. I think we're definitely on a down slope. But all sports are cyclical, and I think we'll see football bounce back in the next 3 or 4 years. We just need to have more personalities that are polarizing for the right reason as opposed to the wrong reason.
And then the last note for the NFL is one that relatively quick. The Chargers and Rams cannot fill their stadium. And the whole talk before the Chargers had their first home game in Los Angeles at the StubHub Center was, hey, 27,000 seat soccer stadium is going to be a really cool way to watch the NFL. Well, no one apparently got that message because for all intents and purposes, it was less than half filled, and half of that was Miami Dolphin fans. So, and then the Rams are also struggling with their own stadium being in the Coliseum, which is a huge stadium that doesn't nearly fill as many as I think that they hoped for, and they've even dropped the seats by 10,000 heading into this year. I think they went from 70 to 60 to try and mitigate the loss that you see on TV. We all know the reasons why. I mean, for the most part, LA didn't necessarily clamor for 2 teams. 1 team they kind of maybe were happy with, but 2 teams, certainly that's overkill. Do you see this changing, Franco, or is this just going to be, hey, if your team plays the Chargers and you live in LA, it's a great day for you to spend rooting the away team instead of the home team?
I think the latter is probably true. I think once they build the new stadium, and that's going to be its own draw in of itself, and if you have that rotation where it's Chargers, Rams, varying by week to week because they're sharing the stadium, that's also going to help. But let's be honest, and you are an LA fan, so I'll give you a little room, but LA fans generally suck. LA is a very fair weather city, and neither team is really excellent and haven't been good for a while. So unless either one picks up steam and gets to be relevant, we're not going to see a following. Now, if the Rams win the division and go to the playoffs, LA fans will suddenly own Rams gear, and you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it on leg warmers and Snuggies and hoodies and yoga pants. But until they start winning, you're not going to see it. And I think the team that wins will be the one that's popular. See LA Lakers / Clippers for the last 2 decades.
Hey, I stayed for the full Dodger game that I went to, and half the stadium was gone, and I stayed till the very end.
That's great, but I don't want to have to remind you that the Dodgers are on a winning streak, or not on a winning streak, but they're building towards a great season on their way, hopefully, to the World Series. So
I'm just saying. Even with that, people were stiw leaving at the end of the 7th inning stretch. I'm just saying. I just want to put that out there.
It is LA. Like I said, it's LA.
Before we transition to some WWE stuff, we did want to talk a little bit about what was going on with ESPN anchor Jamele Hill, who tweeted about Donald Trump, that he was a white supremacist and that he was supportive of that movement and of that culture, and then was criticized by not necessarily at first ESPN, and correct me if I'm wrong, Franco, I'm trying to make sure I've got the right timing, but it was people who were calling her out on Twitter that then prompted ESPN to respond by really botching the response, by not really supporting her at all. It was sort of throwing her out there to the wolves further by saying, well, Jamele, she didn't consult us first, and this is her opinion, it's not ESPN's opinion. And then there were rumors that they tried to punt her off the SportsCenter at 6 program, and that her partner, Michael Smith, was not interested in doing that and refused to go on, and they tried to replace her with 2 different African American anchors that they had.
Yep.
Which is a whole nother interesting discussion / what is going on there. And then she's back, but then ESPN trolls Curt Schilling, who came back from the dead, to start clamoring for attention again by saying that it was unfair that he was kicked off for his views, but Jamele gets to stay, and ESPN's liberal, blah blah blah. And I just wanted to get your take, Franco, and what were your thoughts when you saw it?
I think abject disgust, and I really don't want to give it more time than it deserves, because it doesn't deserve time. Jamele Hill voiced a personal political opinion that had no hate speech in it, on her personal Twitter that is not linked to ESPN. And that's the be-all, end-all. She's a journalist. She has a right to publish as she sees fit on her own personal accounts. The difference between her and Curt Schilling is Curt Schilling has a history of being antagonistic and crossing the line as what's accepted as journalistic integrity, and also in just common decency. That's the difference. So it shouldn't have been an issue. ESPN should have pointed out it wasn't an issue instead of kind of selling her up the creek.
Right.
And it's even more disgusting that their solution was to try to bring in another African-American anchor to replace them both when they both decide not to come in,
Right.
thinking that that's what makes her special as a journalist, as opposed to her skills, talents, and obvious insight. So all around, ESPN botched it horribly. It's a non-issue for her. She can say what she wants to say. And on the same note, even though we probably both believe liberal, if Curt Schilling could express himself in a way that wasn't offensive and express his views and beliefs, good for him. He still have a job. The problem is that he chose to take the route that was arrogant, biting, and was offensive to many people, and that's why he doesn't have a job. Nothing else. And as we all know, Curt Schilling loves the limelight. This is just another example of him trying to grab on and hold on to his 15 minutes of fame. Kind of like the bloody sock that wasn't actually bloody.
I agree. I think the only positive I can pull from this is more. I was reading some articles, and Bill Simmons in particular, who did a mailbag, and someone asked him what his thoughts were, and I think he put it well. He had a great point. He was like, that this situation has now made Jamele more powerful than ESPN, because they absolutely need her now. More than they did before, and it also highlighted on a national level how talented she was. So I think if you only knew her because you were a sports fan, now everybody knows who she is across the country. So, and hopefully that she can use that to her benefit, at the very least, to believe ESPN and parlay for something much, much stronger and better. So that's at least what my hope is. But who knows how long her contract is? I don't know. We don't work for ESPN, OBS. We are Amp Media,
clearly,
for 2 more episodes. That's at least the silver lining for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see her move on to bigger and better things. I think the way ESPN treated her was horrible, and I think she deserves to capitalize on this
Yep.
serve her contract out, and then get a bigger contract at NBC Sports, somewhere else like that, and really cash in on this whole thing.
So let's transition in the last 8 minutes or so, maybe, or less. As you know, we've said this many, many times. We love the WWE. And No Mercy is on this Sunday, the 24th. And it features a variety of matches, which I've kind of been paying attention to, kind of not. This is the post-SummerSlam kind of hangover, if you will, where they do a really great job, as you know, Franco, with the core pay-per-views, and then they kind of throw these together. This one's not bad, but I'll run through a few of the cards and then circle back and see which... let me run through the card, then we'll circle back and see which ones we really are interested in. So you have Roman Reigns versus John Cena on pay-per-view for the first time. You have a Raw Women's Championship match, 5-way with Emma, Bayley making her return from injury, Sasha Banks and Nia Jax against current champion Alexa Bliss. And you have the Raw Tag Team Champions, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose going against Cesaro and Sheamus. And then you have what will likely be... I'm sorry, there's a few more. I missed that. It will be Bray Wyatt versus Finn Balor, not Demon Balor. So there's a little out there we could discuss. And then Jason Jordan versus The Miz for the Intercontinental Championship. Enzo Amore versus Neville for the Cruiserweight Championship. And then the main event is going to be Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman. So of those cards, Franco, which one are you looking... Of those matches, which one are you looking forward to the most?
It's probably a tie for me. I want to see how Roman Reigns versus John Cena plays out. And I'm really interested in the Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman.
I think for me, I agree with you with the Lesnar versus Strowman simply because they were entertaining together during that SummerSlam match. I don't know. I guess I'm a little leery because that was a fatal 4-way where this is a one-on-one match, so who knows how long it's actually going to go. Typically, Brock Lesnar matches don't go very long, much past 10 to 15 minutes. That's usually the sweet spot. Anything longer than that, unless there's a gimmick associated with it, doesn't always look that great at the end because he usually gets gassed because he's pretty intense right up for the first 10 minutes. So we'll see. And then the other one I'm actually kind of interested in is Jason Jordan versus The Miz because the storyline, at least there's some sort of storyline, minus the Kurt Angle is my dad thing. That really hasn't gone too much, but the main storyline is that he's been on a losing streak since that announcement. So perhaps maybe there's some development of Jason Jordan turning on Kurt Angle, and maybe Kurt Angle will actually get cleared medically, although it's a long shot, get cleared medically by the WWE to perform. We also have sort of with the women's match, the looming return, it looks like, of Paige, who's been gone for about 2 years. There's some rumbling. She's down at the WWE Performance Center training. Now, that's sort of usually a signifier that a move is imminent toward the main roster again. I don't think we'll see her at No Mercy, but you never know. And you could also always pencil in a Ronda Rousey appearance that they could continue that storyline. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole mouthful you put out there.
Yeah,
I don't think we'll see Rousey on this one. I think we'll see Rousey over on the SmackDown brand just because that's where Charlotte and Becky are. Yeah, I think Lesnar Strowman will be a slow build match. I do think it'll go 20 minutes.
Okay.
I think Lesnar is good at carrying other wrestlers, and he's also good at telling stories. And Heyman being out there will probably help alleviate that a little bit. I'm sure we'll have an incident where he's in the ring distracting Strowman for a while and gets thrown out to the back, and then the match really starts. With the women's match, I wish I could say I was excited about it, but it's kind of stale. Bayley has not been handled well. The only good result for me would be if Alexa Bliss maintains. I think she's the most interesting woman on the roster right now. As far as The Miz and Jason Jordan, I wish I cared about Jason Jordan. I don't. He's very boring. His ring skills are kind of Lesnar light. He's not as talented, but uses the same moveset. The Miz is significantly more interesting. He's probably the best talker and entertainer on the show. Really should be in the main event picture if it wasn't for Lesnar. So I'm really hoping The Miz walks away from this, and if it leads to an Angle versus Jordan match, that'd be great, but I really don't care. I'd rather just see Jordan lose and go on into the program. If that means Angle down the line, great. If it doesn't, then we'll see Jordan fade off into oblivion, kind of like Drew McIntyre after he was chosen as the chosen one by Vince McMahon. I think that's where we're going with this one, honestly.
Before we go, we got to do our tradition. It is fantasy football. So, Franco, give me who are you selling high? I got this confused. I don't know why. I'm tired. So I was like, sell low, sell high, buy high. So it's sell high. Who are you selling high I'm assuming in a trade or even waiver? I don't know where you're going with this. Sell
So we'll
high.
have to go
Pick your
trade
player.
because by the time the show comes out, the waiver will be done.
Yeah.
Unless your league has super weird settings. But my sell high, and this is a little bit risky, that's fine, but I'm selling high on Todd Gurley.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being a lot of his offenses come from pass catching out of that backfield, and he's really struggled between the tackles. Great. He's put a lot of numbers up, but a lot has been touchdown dependent. I think he'll always be a good RB2, but right now you can probably get value for RB1 out of him. So if you can move him to an owner that's attached to that number and really enjoying his run, sell him high. As far as buying low, we'll go 2 players. One, Brandon Cooks from the Patriots has not been fantastic right now. He's been around 6 or 7 points in standard and PPR. But with all those injuries, Edelman being out, Hogan maybe being out, coming back in, eventually he and Brady are going to get connected. He's going to start to produce. So I'd buy him low if I have the chance. Don't forget that first couple of games of Randy Moss were not necessarily the greatest until they started to become the greatest show on snow, I guess, because it's not turf out there. But and the second player, and this is going to sound crazy, but Ezekiel Elliott, there's always someone in the league that panics. Probably not in our league because Randy owns him, but after seeing that game and the attitude and the suspension looming, as much as I won't do this, but you can probably talk that person to a lower deal than they'd normally accept. And Elliott will produce again. He will be great. So if you can do it, do it.
All right, and Franco, what did you learn today?
I learned, man, I don't know if I learned anything today. This may be a no lesson.
What?
Episode. Oh, I learned that you have guns. The tank's out. Not even a tank top. What is that thing? Is
I
it
didn't
like
even. I was like, I don't have a weapon on me, and then I was like, oh, this one.
Oh man, that's okay. We'll animate some fire onto that.
Yes, please.
Now, is that a sleeveless tee or a tank?
This is a tank.
Okay. So that's what I learned today. I learned that despite the thick shoulder area on that shirt, it's still a tank.
Still a tank. And what I learned is these guns are illegal. For the BFF show, I'm Brendan.
I'm Franco.
Bye-bye.
Peace.